guys, CG here. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to add a fully toggleable passive buff system to your realm or server. Now, this system will allow you to create different situations that will apply a buff to the player, whether it's an item in the inventory or by some other means, which I'll show you in the video. So let's check this out. So currently I have a Amulet of Speed and a Feather of Slow Falling, which is of course just a feather and a gold nugget. And because I have those special items, I have, of course, my effects applied. Now, just like in my previous video where I talk about detecting a named item in your inventory, where you technically can't do that, you're checking for a specific data value in your inventory. What we're actually doing here is we're looking for a gold nugget or a feather with a unique data value that's not normally obtainable. Now, with these items and most items, your default data value is 0. So if you ever get a feather normally in game in survival, it's always the data value of 0. Here, this code is checking to see if you have a data value of 1 on your feather, which means that you've gotten this feather through commands. And same with this Amulet of Speed, this gold nugget here. This is checking to see if you have a gold nugget with a data value of 10, and it just felt like typing 10 just because you can. And so basically, once it checks that you have that specific version of that item, which again is a named version here, then it will apply the buffs to you. And only if you have those items will it apply the buff. So that's very important. And again, so that's all. You understand that if you see my previous video. So you can make this work for regular feathers if you choose, whatever you want. It's up to you. But I think it's cooler to create a system where players can buy these upgraded items, these powerful items, and then once they have them in their inventory, they have a buff applied to them. But the only drawback is that once the player has that item, that buff is always active. So if you wanted to give them a special feather that gives them slow falling while they have the feather, that is always applying to them no matter what. As you can see, every time I jump, I'm slow falling, which is actually really kind of annoying. Like, look at this. It's kind of painful, right? It's very slow. And I don't know about you, but I think slow gameplay is really kind of, it's very boring. It really clashes, because on the ground I'm moving really quick because I have speed, but the second I jump into the air, I go slow, which again kind of makes it just clashes and it doesn't feel good. So I wanted to make sure that the system was smart enough to be able to be toggled on and off, and that's what I've built here. So I've upgraded the system from the previous video to be able to be toggled on and off. Okay, so that's important. So here's what that looks like. So right now, clearly you can see my buffs are active, so it's on. But I can toggle it off now. So now it's toggled off. You can see I've actually just lost my buffs, and I have no more buffs. I'm just running around. I'm not slow falling anymore. But as soon as I drop this item again, it's enabled. And just like that, I have my buffs applied. So that's, as you can imagine, very useful, especially if there are certain effects that you wouldn't want to have always active. Like say you had jump boost at a certain value that you felt, I don't know, a high value jump boost can kind of get annoying if you're always jumping at that height and you're never able to ever again jump at a normal height, so long as you have that item. Well, this would ensure that you can toggle that jump boosted height whenever you choose to, which is I think very valuable. So I'm going to switch my game mode here to survival just to show you. Here I'm going to turn off my passive. So my passive is disabled. And now I'm going to go airborne and fall to the ground. So I can reactivate my passive just like that by throwing the item. And once again, I can activate it just before I hit the ground so I take no fall damage because of my slow falling effect. So that's an example of a situation where it's perfectly suited for. Like, this is when you would want to toggle something on and off. Like, you don't want to, if you didn't toggle it on and off, this would be what would happen. You would always be slow falling like this. And that's great if that's going to make sure you don't die, but at the same rate, if you're always slow falling like this, that's really just super boring. Super, super boring. And we don't like boring. So, yeah, now you can toggle that on and off, and you can do so much more with that system now. Also, I mentioned that you can technically trigger passives that don't have anything to do with items in your inventory. So, well, let's take a look at that. I'm going to show you how to create this, but let's just fly over here. So this is a Ninja Pro upgrade, which once I get this upgrade, I will become fully invisible while standing in tall grass. So I need 20k. Here's 20k. and now I'll buy it. So you will now be fully invisible in tall grass. If you didn't get any items, there's no item that dictates this. What's actually controlling this is now I've actually received a special tag that allows me to become invisible while in tall grass. So here I can go back to survival, and you can see that, let me re-enable my passive, ready? My passives are enabled, and now I have the additional passive of being able to go totally invisible while in tall grass because I have that upgrade. So now while I'm inside tall grass, I am totally invisible. Even if I'm sitting right here, that was off of it a little bit. That's, yeah, so long as you're standing on tall grass, like near the center, you're totally invisible. Again, you want to make sure that you're not holding an item or not wearing armor, because just that's how invisibility works in this game. Only you are physically invisible. Nothing you're wearing or holding is, which is kind of cool, but also kind of annoying. So, yeah. So that's very cool. Now, this, like all my other passives, is entirely toggleable. So, I can go standing in this bush here and become totally invisible, and I can drop my toggle passive, and I will lose my passive, and I will once again become visible, and I'm no longer invisible while standing in tall grass. That's, I think, really cool, because what if you don't always want that active? You can just toggle it off if you don't want that on. And then when you want it back, you can just toggle it and walk back into the grass, and you're invisible. So, very cool. Definitely a lot of applications that you can do with this. There's a lot of versatility with this system. But let's take a look at how it's all coded. So I've already shown in my previous video how to do this. Technically in that video, I realized when I watched it back to myself, I did forget to go over these commands like one by one. So I actually, in the previous video, I actually went ahead and just typed in all these commands into the chat. I believe they're all in chat, not chat, the comments below the video. So again, I didn't finish this string, but that string is below in the comments in the video. So I will not go over how to build this kiosk again, but it's in the previous video. That will show you how to sell these special items that grant these special abilities in game for those players. But I will show you how to build this, because this is slightly different, because you're only buying a tag. Now this is very simple, but if you don't know much about commands, this can be kind of confusing if you don't know how to do it. So I'll show you how to build this at the end. Okay, so quickly, if you've seen the first video, this system is going to be very familiar to you. I'm going to go as fast as possible, but just know that all that's really changed in this part of the system is I just renamed the scoreboard to make more sense for multiple passives. So here, we're just going to use the scoreboard called passive check. Now we're just going to basically check a whole different bunch of situations where a passive could be applied. And so say we're going to check each item one by one, and if you have the item, we'll give you the passive. If you don't, you won't get the passive. Simple as that. So again, just type this command into chat. If you built my previous system already, you can keep that name just the way you have it. It's fine. It's up to you. For me, I like things to make sense, just how they're written and coded. So I want this to apply for all my passives. I want this system to be checking for each passive, not one particular passive. So passive check it is. And this right here is how it will display if I actually display it as a scoreboard, like on my screen, but I would never actually really need to do that. Again, in the previous video, I did talk about how you do need to make sure you add all players to the scoreboard with at least a score of, you need to add them a score of 0, because if they don't have a score of 0, then the system cannot actually check them. It cannot check them if they don't have a score of 0. So you need to add 0. And here what's going on is repeat unconditional always active. Again, this command only needs to run, it doesn't need to be run that frequently. So even if it ran every 3 seconds, which is 60 ticks, that'd be fine, or 100 ticks, which is 5 seconds. Again, 20 ticks is 1 second. So you can do that. Alternatively, like I said in the other video, what you can also do is just copy this command block or copy the code within it, whatever, and then go over here and then place on the block in a chain unconditional always active form. Now again, this is a typical remove offline player system. I say that, but really all this is a test for an A system. But most people who don't know much about commands see systems like this commonly used with remove offline players. But here all that's happening is every time a player is detected to have joined or left the game, then this line of code will all run. And so long as you have a system like that somewhere in your world in a always loaded area, again, just chain conditional always active, remove that tick delay, and enter that command as always. Now this is the most I think this is the most sensible way to implement this code because it only runs every time a player joins or leaves the game. So that would just make sure all players, without question, will always have a score of 0. This works just fine too, but this will run every 3 seconds, even if all players already have 0. So technically, you don't need this. You wouldn't want this to be always running that much. But this will never really cause lag because, again, that's such a long delay. You're fine. But you can do either or. Anyway, so here, let's look at this. So repeat, unconditional, always active. Here, we're looking for a player with a passive check score of 0. So it's going to grab one player randomly with a passive check score of 0. And this part right here, this exclamation exclude, this is going to be where we can enable or disable our passive. This is what handles that. And here is where we're going to add a tag passive check. So this passive check is our scoreboard name, and this passive check will become our new tag name for the player it's checking. So this system, like I said in the previous video, is set up in a way where it will only check one player at a time, and then it will move on to the next player, and then check that player. And once all players have been checked, then it will reset the score, and then it will check all players again. So the way the system is set up is no player will be checked more than once before another player is checked. So there's no way that a player will be, because this is using random and checking a player at random, it will never check the same player 10 times in a row. Kind of like how if you flip a quarter, you might get heads 10 times in a row. That will never happen, just because at the end of the system, it's actually going to change their score from 0 to 1 so that they will no longer be selectable by the system. And once all players have a score of 1 and there's no one left with a score of 0, the system will basically reactivate this redstone torch, which will then set everyone to 0, which will enable the system to check the players all over again and repeat. So looking at these commands here, just put a comparator into a random block, redstone torch, and again, just pause if you need to. I'm going to try to go over these fast. I don't want this video to be too long. Repeat unconditional needs redstone. Enter this command, and again, this is just going to reset all of the passive check scores to 0 once there's no one else with a score of 0 to find. Here again, repeat unconditional always active. There's the command again, and of course you've already seen that. So now, just going over this quickly, because again, this is mostly the same from the other video, but what's going on here is we just have multiple passive lumped into the same thing. So we have, every time we're checking for a different item, we want that to be an unconditional chain block. So here it's looking for the nugget, which is this guy right here. That's going to be unconditional. Here, because this one's looking for the feather, that one's going to be unconditional. The reason for that is because you want to check that player. You want, no matter what, we want to make sure that we always check the player for every single criteria that could possibly give them a buff. And if they have that, that's why we set the unconditional, because if we set this feather to unconditional, this one right here, if we set this to conditional, that means that this cannot run unless these ones before it ran. And that would mean that you would not be able to get the effects for a feather if the player didn't also have a nugget. And that's not how we want the system to work. We want the system to be smart enough to give them just the feather effect if that's all they have. We don't want them to also need to have the amulet of speed in order to give them the feather effects. So that's why for every time you check for each unique new item, go ahead and make sure that's an unconditional always active chain command block. Now I'll show you the code in a moment, but just note that when you actually do apply the effects, so now that if this one executes successfully, that means yes, that player has that nugget with that special data value. Then we want to apply the effects in a conditional way. So these will only ever execute if that player does have that nugget. So these ones where you actually apply the buff, those will be conditional always. Okay, so let's look at that very quickly. Chain unconditional always active. Here, again, with a clear command, the first number represents the data value of the item, and 0 represents how many you want. That number right here represents how many you want to remove. In this case, none. So we're just going to check to see if they have that gold nugget with a data value of 10. If they do, like I said, these two were conditional, so these will apply. Again, very quickly, speed is being applied for 1 second with a value of 2. That's the strength of how strong the speed is. It goes up to 255. I can't imagine you ever want to go that high. I find that a lower value between 0 and 3 is good for most of these effects, because you don't want to go too much here. I think subtle passive buffs are enough and are game changing enough to merit their existence. And here, You could do that again. Saturation. This is just because I just didn't want my saturation to go down. But again, you could even have this at 1, and it would probably be nearly infinite as well. But yeah, it just wouldn't be as. All this is doing is it's going to make sure your food always stays at max. That's all that's doing. Okay. So like I said, you get the clear feather. Once again, chain unconditional. We check for the feather with a data value of 1. If they have it, then it will apply slow fall. So that's conditional. That will only run if the player has that feather. And here's the command for that. Okay. So you can see even with the lowest data value of slow fall, I still fall very, very slowly. I can't even imagine. I haven't even tried because I just hate being slow. I can only imagine how slow you would fall as you increase this. I don't even know what that would look like, honestly. I haven't even tried. Okay. So chain unconditional always active. So this is unique. Now this is how we handle the invisibility thing. So as I said, you can toggle this on and off at will, just like anything else. And the way that works is this. This is a little bit different, and it's cool to understand this because this will allow you to add more passives to the game. So here's an example. Chain unconditional always active. Again, because we're checking for a new condition now. We're checking for, this is just like when we check for items, if the player has a certain item, this new condition also has to be unconditional. Okay? Just make sure this new one is also unconditional. So chain unconditional always active. And here, we want to make sure that we check for a special tag as well. This tag is what's going to make sure that that player can or cannot. This tag basically acts as their item here. As far as the code is concerned, it kind of has the same effect. But so basically the way this works is we know the player using this, that's being checked already has this passive check tag. But if they also have the ninja tag, which means they purchased the upgrade which added the tag ninja from over here, if they have the tag ninja, then it will also apply this invisibility buff while in tall grass. And again, enter this command exactly as you see it with the -1 in all, otherwise it won't work in all tall grass. And you actually need another command block to further make sure it works in the rest of the tall grass. So chain unconditional always active. Once again, type this exactly. You see it, double plant 2 with the data value 2 will make sure you get all the rest of the tall grass. So this will work with all of the tall grass in the game, and you'll be invisible in it just fine. So the reason that we have this tag here again is because if I was to remove that tag, here I'm going to remove that tag, so I basically undid buying this item, this upgrade. I mean, now I don't have that upgrade, and what the system's going to do is it's going to say, okay, does the player who has passive check, that tag passive check, do they also have ninja? No, they don't. So this code will fail and not run. And same with this code. So basically now we know, even though my passives are active, as you can see here, clearly when I walk into the bush, I'm no longer visible because I don't have that ninja tag anymore, so it cannot target me. So that's how you ensure that that buff will not apply to all players that's being checked. It can only apply to players that have purchased that upgrade, which is, again, right there. So that's how that works. And at the end, after you've added all your items and all your different effects in here, at the very end, you can go ahead and set the score. So chain unconditional always active. We want these last two to be unconditional because no matter what, we want these to run without question. So chain unconditional always active. We're going to set the passive check score of that player to 1. Again, at the beginning they were 0, and now that we checked that player, we can add a score of 1 so they cannot be checked again. And now remove the tag. Chain unconditional always active. We're going to remove that passive check tag from all players, and then the system will, of course, grab a new player and add the passive check tag to them and check them now. And again, once it runs out of players and it's checked all the players, it will just reset their scores back to 0 and check them all over again. So technically speaking, as I said in the previous video, this runs at 20 ticks. Again, 20 ticks a second. So 0 means it's going to be as fast as 20 ticks in 1 second. So that means that on paper, the system can actually check and handle 20 players at a time. So up to 20 players, and it will happen so quickly that you will never lose your 1 second buff. But if you go over 20 players, technically on paper, what you would need to do is go ahead on here and where it says where you have the time, where you have like apply for where the duration is 1, you're going to want to change that to 2 if you're over 20 players. If ever you find in the system that you that the number of your players that you have in your realm or server causes you to actually lose that buff because it's still checking the players. Like, the idea is you never want this passive buff to go away. You always want it to be there if you have the item in your inventory. You only want it to not be there if you don't have that item. So if you have so many players that you're losing that buff and you still have that item, all you need to do is just increase the duration by 1 second. And if that doesn't solve your problems entirely, then just go up by another second, But I would start at 1 because that way it's the most responsive for if you have 20 or less players. So that's how that works on paper. It should work. There's no reason for it not to work that fast because this is technically working at 20 times a second. And then again, once it gets to the end of that, it will just reset. Okay, now the toggleability portion is right here. Actually, before I get to that, quickly I have to explain this. I had a few people who used my system in a previous video who wanted to let players buy items like swords and get buffs for having diamond swords with special buffs on them. Well, to do that, you have to be a little bit. You have to create a variation of the system. It's kind of like this. So basically, the thing about items that have data values that can be something other than 0, like swords. Any item that has durability, for example, automatically can have a whole range of naturally different data values. So a brand new sword will have a certain data value, and like if I give myself a diamond sword with a data value of 50, that will also have a that will actually have a damage. Like, so if I go here, let me just use give myself diamond. Let's see, sword. Should have done sword. Sword. Oops. We're gonna do again. We want 1 sword, and we're gonna do. Let me get rid of my other swords first, so you can see. Actually, it'll be obvious anyway. But so 1 sword, and if I do even a data value of 50, you can see it's a little bit damaged. So the data value when you use a sword or anything with durability actually represents how much durability that item has. So it's basically the health of that item. So if I do 200, I'll have more damage, and then 3,000. See how much that is. So that's pretty much 1 hit from death. I think it will die in 1 hit after 1 use. Let's see, 800. What will that look like? That's what 800 looks like. The 800 is about half health. So the problem is if you let a player buy a sword with a data value of 800, first of all, they get a sword that's half dead like this, which is not very useful. But also, if you were to target that data value, see how right here we're checking for a gold nugget of 10. Well, if you were checking for a diamond sword of 800, the problem is that once that player uses that sword and the durability has changed from what it used to be, the data value for the item is no longer 800. It actually changed to something else now. So now, if you had a diamond sword, if you had a code affecting a diamond sword with a value of 800, it's not going to be able to detect that sword now because it's not 800 anymore. So the only workaround for that is to create a system like this that will let players with diamond swords have a buff. So again, all you would need to do is add a tag, just like this. It's the same exact system as this, and it will just give you a tag. So here, you can see that now what we're going to do is we're going to let the player buy a sword upgrade from a kiosk like I just showed for some amount of money that you decide, so that whenever they have a diamond sword anywhere in their inventory, they will have a certain buff applied. And here, what we do to make this code work flawlessly is we do -1 for the data value. And what that's going to do is that's going to make sure it gets all diamond swords. It doesn't matter what their data value is. So even if your sword is almost broken or if it's brand new, this buff will apply to you all the same. And it will only apply to you if you have purchased that upgrade. So that way, the system, while it's checking random players for all these different conditions, it won't just automatically give you a buff because you have a diamond sword in your inventory. It will only give it to you if you've purchased that upgrade. And so here, this would be just like the other blocks I showed you. This would be chain unconditional always active. Again, here's the code for that. And here, we can do chain conditional. Again, chain conditional, because that means if you do have a diamond sword on you and this is successful and this is conditional, this will then run. and it will apply that haste to that player as a value for a duration of 1 second, again, at a strength of 1. Okay, so that's how that works. So, of course, you could just move that into this right here, and you want to make sure you put it before the set score and remove tag. Lastly, it's important to note that you can make individual systems that just check for a certain item, and you can create a toggleable version for everything. Like, say you only wanted to be able to toggle slow falling. Well, you could have a system like this that only is checking for a special feather, and then have that be toggleable. So that way your speed is always applied, but your slow falling is something that you can toggle on and off. Yeah. So again, you don't have to have all of your buffs be in one system like this, but I think this is the cleanest way to do it and the best way to do it. But it depends on your needs, and also it also depends on how many. You don't want to have too many items, because you're already giving players enough items. Like, this is taking up an item slot. This is going to take up an item slot. Yeah, give some buffs and that's great, but that's taking up some slots right there. And then you need a toggle item. So I think it makes sense to have just one toggle item, and that handles all of your passives. But again, that's up to you. You can design it however you want. Okay, so here's the toggle system. So all we're going to do is create an item that we rename to toggle passive, and that can be any item. It doesn't matter. Just toggle passive. We'll start over here on the far right. Okay, so this is if they don't have the tag. So basically, this looks a little confusing. Just go ahead and copy it all verbatim. Repeat unconditional, always active. Just enter this code exactly as you see it. It's all very specifically coded, but so just enter it the way you see it. And this is going to make basically what's going to happen here is these two pillars right here, these two chains. These represent conditionals where if the player has the tag already, then do this. So if basically when you drop this toggle passive, it's going to give you the tag exclude, and if you and once you have the tag exclude, then you're excluded from the system, so you no longer can be targeted by the system, and you don't get those passives anymore. But when you drop the item again, it will detect, okay, you already have the exclude tag, so remove it instead of this time. It actually took a long time to figure the system out because I ran into all sorts. It was a headache. It was a headache, guys. But I did it. I'm pretty excited about that, and here it is now for you guys. So basically, just understand that what the system's going to do is it's going to check the state of what your current state is. Like, are you toggled on or are you toggled off? Do you have that exclude tag or do you not have it? And if you do or if you don't, it will switch to the opposite of that state. So that's how that's working. So okay, so just copy all the commands as you see it. Repeat unconditional, always active. Here's that command again. Now this is going to be chain conditional, always active. And go ahead and just add this command as you see it. Again, this is all very specifically coded, so to enter this exactly as you see it. Again, you don't have to call it toggle passive, but it makes sense to. If you don't, just if it's one word, you don't need quotes. If it's two words with a space between, you need quotes. Okay. Chain conditional, always active. Enter this command. Now this will just allow I think it's important to provide feedback so the player knows that their passive is now literally disabled without question. And here we want to kill the item. Chain conditional, always active. We want to kill that item, so it doesn't stay on the ground. If it stayed on the ground, then it would just keep on toggling your state back and forth, and it would break. It wouldn't work well. It would be kind of ruined. Now this is repeat unconditional, always active. This is going to check to see if they have that tag. So if they do have that tag, the system will then remove that tag. This chain will remove it. So go ahead and enter this as you see it. Now this is going to be chain conditional, always active. Of course, here we're just going to remove that exclude tag. Okay, so remove that exclude tag so they can be targeted by the system again. Now chain conditional, always active. Here we're going to alert to the player that their passive is now enabled. All right, and now again, chain conditional, always active. We're going to kill that item. And lastly, I wanted to make sure I was able to handle a situation where this item, these toggle passives were left on the ground. Like, say you died, and I can actually illustrate this. So here, I came up with a fix for this. So as you can see, there's all these items on the ground over here. And what that is over there is that's a bunch of these papers this is a bunch of the toggle passive item. So I wanted to make sure that there's no chance that if you died and this item was left on the ground, I wanted to make sure that when you approach it, it would never accidentally switch your state. I wanted it to only happen if it was an intentional decision by you. And I also didn't want other players to be able to switch your state without your intention. Like, I don't want any, I wanted you to only be, I wanted to make sure that no other players would affect your state. And I wanted to make sure that random items like this on the ground would not affect your state either. So let's check this out. Here you can see currently my toggle is passive. My passive is toggled on, which means I have my passive. So when I approach this, I will actually automatically delete it because of this command block, which I'll show you in a second. So watch. It's deleted. I picked up those other items, as you can see here. That was just a repeat of these guys. But it automatically removed these extra papers on the ground, the extra toggle passives. It didn't actually toggle my passive off. So as you can see, once again, there's a paper. Normally, if I didn't have this command block that I'm about to show you, that would basically, getting close to that would trigger and disable my passive. But instead, I have a protection built in there into the code to make sure that that can't happen. So it will always be smart enough to not disable your code, disable your passive unless you're intending to do so. That way, if you did die and all these items were on the ground next to all the stuff that was there, and you're going back to get your items, maybe you don't want your state to be toggled off and then stay off. This is just a fix for that. So that code looks like this. So repeat unconditional always active. This is going to kill the item, 0 ticks of delay, and just enter this code exactly like this, and you'll be good to go. Now you'll never have an issue. You'll always be able to your passive will never be toggled against your will, and that's that. Okay, so that's basically everything. At least for those of you who don't understand how to build like a store to buy a tag or a store to you can see this in the other video. I'm not going to go over this, but I'll go over this very quickly for those of you who don't understand how to buy a tag with a shop system. But right here, as you can see, let's go over this very quickly. So obviously, this is going to sell a player tag if they have 20k. I don't have 20k right now, so if I go to buy it, it will just say not enough credits. I'm going to actually disable my passive. Passive disabled. Okay. So yes, if you don't have money, of course, the system's smart and it's not going to work. Oh my god, I actually didn't even change the text in there. Whoops. You can see it's just saying not. I actually didn't edit that, but whatever. Whoops. Not enough money. There we go. Check this out now. Boom, not enough money. Okay, so that's how that works. So let's look at this quickly. All right, so once the signal comes through here, when you click the button, the signal will come through here, come through this comparator, and it will power this block. This is going to check to see if you have enough money. So impulse unconditional needs redstone. And here, enter the amount you want to check for. So if it's going to be 20k, and enter 20k, and that's the whole code. They can never, ever, ever buy if they don't have at least 20k. And here you want to put a comparator off to the side like this, and this allows us to do conditional statements. And I'll show you that in a second. And here you want to place a repeater with 2 ticks of delay. So, so you basically want to 2 ticks of delay. So when you place it normally like this, it's 1 tick, and then now it's 2 ticks of delay. So you want to place it just like this. So you're going to place it and then click it once like that. Okay. So that will ensure, the reason we do that, and it's important, if you don't do this, it's actually not going to work right. The reason we do this is so that when the signal comes through here and it gets these blocks right here, there's enough time for this comparator to update, and then for these blocks right here to detect that change, and then carry out the correct code. Because basically, if this comparator right here is on, that means the player did have enough money, and if it's off, that means the player did not have enough money, because comparators will always let you know if a command block ran successfully or unsuccessfully, so it will power or unpower respectively. And if it is powered, that means okay, yeah, run the positive code, and it will give you the item and it will give you the tag and all that. So that's great. And if you don't have enough money like me, but by the time the signal gets over here and it powers the system, it says, yeah, this is actually off, which means that player has no money or not enough money, and it will run this code. So very quickly, here's the code for when you don't have enough money. So impulse unconditional needs redstone. We have this command right here. These two commands are very similar. So this one's looking for an unpowered comparator at a certain location, and this one's going to be looking for a powered comparator at a certain location, and that location is right there. Plug in that location for yourself. So again, if it's unpowered, this chain will run. So chain conditional, always active. These all have to be chain conditional, by the way. Now here, you can enter your negative message. Now you don't have to do this, but this is best practice. I just want to make sure I teach you guys best practices when applicable. And in this case, it makes sense to target the player who's closest to the button. So you can get the coordinates either by standing here at the button, or you can of course type look at the button, just like literally look at the button, type /fill, and in the lower left hand corner of the screen you see that 25. That actually represents the X value of that button. If you click space, the 4 is the Y value, and so on. Or a PC, or if you have a keyboard and a console, I believe it works the same if you have a keyboard and a console. You can just click tab twice, and like that, like for each value, click it twice, and it will just fill it in automatically. Then you can just go copy this and plug it into the code. So it's good to target the player who's closest to the button, because that is likely the player who actually clicked the button. We're not guaranteed to know that, but it's a much better chance. If you didn't do that, then if another player was somehow closer to these command blocks than you were, then they would get these messages or these items or whatever, what have you, okay? So that's why it makes sense to, if you're using a system for buying and selling, you want it to be accurate, you go ahead and put the coordinates where the player would be interacting with the system so it can't target someone else accidentally. Just, that's how that works. So, again, we have the not enough message. Now we have a negative sound, so chain condition always active. Here's our negative sound at the player in that location. And here again is our, so wait, this is, yeah, so this is, yeah, I actually changed this up here. You don't actually need this last one at the end, because it actually already pops up on your screen. As you can see on my screen, on the bottom it says not enough credits. So you don't need that happening twice. I think I forgot when I was building it, I forgot to remove that, so I'll just remove that. But if you want to do something like this instead, you can type it like this. If you didn't want to have this version of it, you can do that. Okay, so that's how that would work. Okay, so this is also set up specifically. Again, we're going to have the powered one this time. So if it's powered, we know they have enough money. Now here, we want to put the add tag first. These are all going to be conditional. The reason you put the add tag first is because we want to make sure that the player already has a tag, then they can't spend their money again accidentally if they're just stupid enough to click the button again. So for example, if I go ahead and buy, now I have the upgrade. If I buy it like that, I already have this upgrade. Watch what happens if I click it again. Absolutely nothing. I already have the upgrade. Click it again. Nothing happens. Even though you can see this is on, which means I do have enough money. It says this is saying, hey, yeah, this player has enough money, so you should activate this chain right here. But what's happening is, because I have the tag first and not to take the money first, it's seeing that, wait a minute, this player already has that tag right here. See? Target already has the tag. So what that's going to do is it's going to fail. This command block will fail, and then these guys will not happen. These guys will not run. So this will make sure that if the player already has that tag and they've already purchased that upgrade, that means that they cannot spend money accidentally. So that's why you put the tag before the payment in this case. So chain condition always active. Here's the tag, and add whatever tag you need. Here's how we pay. Chain condition always active, and again, here's where you enter your value for how much you want to pay. Positive sound at the player. Chain condition always active. Positive sound. And random toast, by the way, is I think it's the Xbox achievement sound, but I don't play Xbox, so I'm not quite sure. But that's random.toast. Or you can use also random.orb. Which would look like this, of course. This is another good sound for like a positive reinforcement sound. But random.toast I think is really great for when you get an upgrade in game. I think it's good to use that for that. It's up to you though. Again, chain condition always active. Yeah, so I think here I chose to have this message play differently, and I think that's why I did that. Because I had that's why I had an older version over here, because I was going to do both. The same with both, but I decided not to. But here what's going to happen is, because I have a longer message, I didn't want it to appear at the bottom of your screen. I wanted you to have time to read it. So chain condition always active, and I'm sending you a longer message, and this is a message that you can go back in your chat and reread if you needed to. But this just basically lets the player know their new ability. Okay. So that's that. That's everything, guys. Yeah, sorry, as always, it's a long video. And of course, like in the other video, you can see that if you do have the items on you, like if I do have my Amulet of Speed, you can also do other things like let players access certain areas. So long as I have this item on me, I can access certain areas that otherwise aren't accessible. Very, very simple to do that. You can check my other video. And I will actually do a video in the future all about doors, command doors, so you can see that, in the future. That will be a more robust video. So that's everything. Hopefully you guys understand and this all makes sense. Again, this has a lot of uses, as you can imagine. And yeah, thanks for your time, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video or at least learned something from it. Please comment, subscribe, like, share, do all that fun stuff. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.